Welcome to another live stream at Lighting Bot. Today we have Florent Tunno. He lives in France and works at DOTNOD, and he will be able to tell more about himself in a few minutes. He has worked on a game like Twin Mirror, and I'll launch the official trailer after we talk a little bit with him first. As usual, you are open to leave comments and questions during the interview. We'll pop it up on the screen, and so I think we should just get started. So let's welcome Florent.
Hello everyone, good evening.
Hey man, so how are you? You alright?
Yeah, fine, and you?
I'm very good, thanks for asking. So I already know Florent a little bit from before, because when I was at Ubisoft, I traveled to Paris and I met with him in person. So that's how I actually know him. So he's not a total stranger, luckily this time, unlike everyone else I've talked to. So this time I actually know this person I'm talking to a little bit. So Florent, tell a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
Yes, so I'm Florent, a lighting artist from the north of France. Currently, I'm working at DOTNOD since 2019, and I was working on Twin Mirror before, and right now I'm working on a new project at DOTNOD.
That's very good. So Florent, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it
Florent Tunno.
Tunno? Well, I knew I was pronouncing it wrong. At least I tried. So, Florent, let's start with a little bit about your background in terms of education and how you worked your way up to where you are now, so people kind of know that career path you have chosen so far.
Yeah, so before joining DOTNOD and the video game industry, I was studying lighting development. And I studied lighting development until the end of 2018. And right after that, I found an internship. So I studied game art. And I decided to specialize myself with lighting right after I finished my studies. So basically, right after I finished my studies and I graduated, I only did lighting for 6 months, 5 or 6 months, roughly. And right after that, I was contacted by a Parisian indie studio who develops VR games. So I worked on a VR escape game. So it's not a game that you can play at home. You have to rent a full room. With COVID, it's pretty difficult right now, but it's a room scale game. So I was responsible for all the lighting, the technical aspect of the game, the optimization. And right after that, 4 months after my internship started, I was approached by DOTNOD to work on Twin Mirror because they needed a lighting artist. And right after that, I started my journey in a pretty big studio that is DOTNOD. And I worked on Twin Mirror for a little more than 1 year and a half. Yeah, 1 year and 8 months. Yeah. And right now I'm working on a secret project, on a new project at DOTNOD.
Cool. So how many people work at DOTNOD, do you know?
Yeah, in total we are more or less 250 people.
Oh, so it is pretty big actually. Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty big studio. I think it's one of the biggest indie studios in France.
Wow, impressive. I thought it was maybe 40, 50, but
No, we are quite a lot.
wow, that's cool, man. So for the people who are watching now, normally we assume people know this, but in case they don't know, being lighting at different studios might be different a little bit. There might be different responsibility and a task involved. So in your case, what is your role as a lighting artist? What does it mean to be a lighting artist at DOTNOD? What is
Okay,
it that you do?
so to put things in context, we have to know that at the beginning of my journey at DOTNOD, I was alone. I was the only lighting artist in the Twin Mirror team. So I had to take responsibilities for a lot of things. So when I arrived, I had to recreate all the lighting pipelines, so involving communicating with the other departments, communicating with the cinematic departments, because it's a big part of my job at DOTNOD, because we are known to create games that have a lot of cinematics inside. And my journey, my day-to-day work consists in reviewing what we will have to do in the lighting department, reviewing what the cinematic department gave to us. And most of the time on Premiere, I had to monitor all the performances, because being a lighting artist is being responsible for a lot of cost on the GPU, on the consoles, or on the PC. So I had to establish the lighting budget on Twin Mirror. I had also a dev kit on my desk, an Xbox One dev kit, to control and monitor all of the stuff we did. I had to establish the limits of what we could do. And after that, I had to create most of the Twin Mirror environment lighting, and just establishing the pipeline and make sure that we would respect it. And a lot of my work on Twin Mirror consisted on helping the technical artist who had a lot of stuff to do not to care about what we did in lighting, in the lighting department. So because I'm a technical person, I like technical stuff a lot. I decided to take the responsibility of the lighting part of the lighting on Twin Mirror, and that helped our technical artists a lot, because they had to like extinguish fire elsewhere.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. So before we move over on to talk a bit more of technical things, I am personally curious about your pipeline, because we have a very similar game, because I also work in a lot of story-driven interactive drama, and I'm curious to know more about your pipeline in terms of so you're working on a new game, and what do you do if there's a bug or there's a problem? What's the workflow there, for example? Let's start with that question. Do you just deal with it, or do you stop what else you're working with? What's the process in terms of dealing with these things?
So the first thing to do is to establish the priority of this bug. If it's killing the game, I would like stop everything else I was doing, and I would just focus on the bug. But if it's something minor, or if I reach to the person who created the bug and this person tells me, okay, this can wait, I will just finish what I'm doing, and then I will just fix the bug. But there is different kind of bugs. There are simple bugs, like a light intensity is way too high, so you just have to dial it down because it was broken in the process. Maybe a blueprint broke, or something else. And major lighting problems, like I have one example. Like, I was working on a scene on Twin Mirror, and I have decided to, in the beginning, I used every spot as a dynamic spot, as a dynamic light. But because I wanted to optimize it, I've decided to turn every spotlight to stationary light in Unreal Engine, and this broke the performances on Xbox One. And this kind of bug, when the QA told me, okay, this scene runs at like 5 or 10 FPS, and the day before it was running smoothly at 30, 40 FPS, I told myself, okay, there is a problem. I will fix it. It's lighting related. And when I opened the performance software that is called Pix for Xbox, I was immediately sure that my changes broke the performances. And I discovered that stationary lights, if they are crossing each other a lot, they can cost more than a movable light. And this kind of bug is like my top tier bug. Like, if the game doesn't run because of the lighting, I have to fix it right away. But as I said, if it can wait, it can wait. Like some broken light intensity can wait an hour or two before I finish my tasks, and I take care of it.
Cool. For people watching, if you have watched any trailer or if you have played the game Twin Mirror or not, let us know in the comments so we know if you are aware of it or not. If enough people say they're not, we will show the trailer so you kind of get an overview. So with the bugs and everything, there's another thing that was very common at Ubisoft, because at Ubisoft I did on my own as well a lot of dialogue, cinematic, and game lighting. So I did a bit too much. And one of the things I've noticed early on was the camera changing, the placement of the characters changing while I was doing the lighting, especially for very specific shots. Now, when you work on a very story-driven games, that is probably even more important to get the shots, the composition, and everything correct. How do you deal with it in your pipeline at your studio to make sure that when you're doing lighting, what happens before and after to make sure that you don't have to reiterate, so the camera doesn't change, the shots doesn't change? Tell us more about that.
So we had a very strict process that consisted on we wouldn't light anything cinematic wise if it wasn't finished on the cinematic side. So every camera angles were locked. Every major modification couldn't happen if we received the task. We could do like a placeholder pass to so the cinematic artist could see something, but most of the time they would just add spots in the scene to see the character, delete their lights, finish their work, and then we moved on lighting the cinematics. It happened sometimes. It was some exceptions when some cinematic shots were completely changed, but we were warned before. Like they couldn't do that without warning us, because if it's happening early in the production or in the middle of the production, it's not a big deal. But if it's happening during the end of the production, during the closing of the game, that is something they have to tell us, because we are finishing a lot of stuff elsewhere. And if they change anything that is already validated and reviewed on the lighting side, so they finish the cinematic, we lit the cinematic, it's reviewed, it's locked, it's accepted as good. Changing that was very exceptional, but we didn't have any major problems with lighting cinematics because our pipeline was very solid on this side.
Cool. Did you ever experience script changes with changed lighting in your game? Because I know that happens in some games as well. Or it's no
What
problem.
kind of changes?
Script or dialogue changes, like something changes, or is it very set in stone when you work on Twin Mirror?
Yeah, it's most of the time it was set in stone when if the Jira task was passed onto lighting, it was because the director of the cinematic department validated every shot. So there were very low possibility to redo the lighting and redo a scene. It happened, but like less than 5 times on the production, because our producers were very careful about that, because they knew we were only 2 lighting artists on Twin Mirror, and they knew we wouldn't have time to check everything and to redo a lot of cinematics, because lighting cinematics takes time, and especially on Twin Mirror, we have like something like more than 3 hours of cinematics. If you take every different choice, and you add every cinematics, it's more than 3 hours. So it's a lot of time, and I think it's just a matter of respecting the departments that are at the end of the production, that they are expecting you to work. So it's good for the sound department, the VFX department, the lighting department to receive something that is ready to work on. I know the placeholder can happen, first pass can happen, but if you say it's locked because it can hurt the department, the end of the line departments.
Cool. So we'll show you the trailer, so you guys can get the more context, so you don't have to Google it up and everything. So we'll launch a trailer so you guys can have a look while we take a sip of water as well.
Peggy 16.
After a short break, mental health expert Dr. Winnicott will discuss the recent opioid epidemic that's been affecting our town.
None of my bed don't weigh the same.
Basswood is many things. Peaceful tops that list.
And change my clothes and walk.
Until that day.
You're the one in the driver's seat, Sam. I can't make you do anything. Coming back to Basswood was your idea. Just try and make sure you don't do anything stupid.
I know you think that the only thing waiting for you down there is hurt. You might be right. The good news, though, at least you don't have to do it alone.
Of course, in this case, it's already out, people. So
Yeah. It's been out for like 6 months now. It was
Yeah.
back in December.
still pretty fresh, still pretty new.
Yeah.
Have you played it? No.
Yes, I did, because actually at the end of the production, I didn't know a lot of stuff about this story because I was very focused on the lighting part, but I wanted to preserve myself from knowing the game bit by bit. And before the release, I played the game from start to finish with my colleague, and I discovered a lot of things. And most of my colleagues mocked me about that because they said, "You work on this game for almost 2 years. How could you not know what would happen?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do lighting. I'm not doing writing or something like that." And that was a good surprise for me to be able to discover some parts of the game, especially the ends, the different endings towards the end of the production. And yeah, it was pretty satisfying to play the game, comparing it to the build that I played when I arrived at DOTNOD, because I think the initial trailer that went out in 2018 or 17 is still on YouTube, and you can see the improvement, the visual improvements we brought to the game. And this is why I'm so proud of our work on the art team on the game, because we transformed the game to something else. And especially the cinematic department did a tremendous job on this game. It's amazing.
That's interesting. So when you do your lighting, do you follow the story or use that to interpret your lighting, or do you look at just the environment when you do the lighting and time of day?
It depends. If it's an environment lighting, I tend to follow the references, and every time I ask what is the mood of the scene, what will the character feel during the scene? Is he in danger? Is he safe? Does he have an anxiety attack? Because Sam in Tremor can have anxiety attacks. So a lot of what will happen in the scene is a condition of the lighting, because all the colors can translate emotions and help the player to immerse himself into the game, to know what will happen, to feel what the character is feeling. And so for the environment part, I work like that. And for the cinematic part, it's like some gut feeling, I'd say. I tend to say, I tend to conserve a cohesion with the environment. I won't lead the person, the character in pink if the environment is blue, of course. But I tend to look at the shot and think, how can I make that beautiful? How can I help the image to look better? How I can help the work of my other colleagues to look better, to look good. And every time there are a lot of memes on the internet, like rim lighting is not realistic. Every artist in video games or cinematic 3D animation adds a lot of rim lighting to the character. It's just beautiful. It just looks good. If something looks good, just do it. And after that, if your director of photography or art director doesn't like it, you can remove it later. It's not a problem. But I think that if you put a little bit of yourself in your work, in your lighting work, it will always bring something. For example, we have a scene in Twin Mirror where the double appears for the first time, and there is an outline of light behind his back, and it was actually my idea at the beginning. This kind of strong rim light wasn't there, and when I've decided to add it and to show it to the cinematic director, he totally accepted it because he told me, okay, it's not realistic, but it's super cool. The character is not supposed to be there, so. And we have decided to add this kind of stuff into the game, into the double character through the game, because it was like finding the identity of the character through lighting.
Cool. That's very interesting to hear because in the game I'm working on, the characters are 2D. So I like the environment, and 2D grading specialist lights according to the environment that I lit. So it's just I don't have the liberty to go, I want the rim light on the character. I just have to trust the person that they're doing the next stage. I miss doing characters as well. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. So you are obviously, as you said in the beginning of this interview, and we also mentioned we were going to talk a little bit about the technical things and Unreal Engine 5 and so on and so forth. So I'll let you talk a little bit about the importance of the technical part of lighting artists, because a lot of people talk about lighting as art. A lot of people underestimate lighting. A lot of people think it's just putting in lights. So what are your thoughts on that when it comes to lighting?
Okay, so like I said to every of my students, every start of each school years, being a lighting artist is not like being 100% an artist. You have to be a technical person. In my opinion, you can't be a lighting artist if you don't have a technical side, because we are one of the departments, if not the department, that costs the most to the GPU budget, to the console of the PC to run the game. So real-time lighting and real-time shadows cost a lot. It's, on my opinion, it's important to know why do you cost a lot, why do stuff cost a lot, and how to avoid it, and how to find solutions to do beautiful stuffs, to push the lighting to the max without breaking the performances. And if you, trust me, if you push your technical side as a lighting artist, you will produce a better art, because you won't have the frustration to do tremendous stuff, but having your technical artist or the QA telling you did too much there, you have to dial back all your settings, etc. And if from the start you know what you're doing and you know what to avoid and where to push the quality and what not to push it, you will be like 10 times more satisfied with your work in the end, because you wouldn't have to redo it over and over until the QA or the technical artist validates your lighting pass. And this is very important. And knowing your budget and knowing how to use it is very important, because, for example, if you put all the settings up and all the lighting stuff in the environment, you won't have anything left for cinematic lighting. And sometimes it's more, in my opinion, it's more important to have a good cinematic lighting than a super good environment lighting, because when a player is moving in the environment, he won't spot most of the flaws of the lighting, and not your errors, but like the technical flaws that, oh, we couldn't put a shadow there, we couldn't put a shadow there, there is no direct lighting there, etc. But when you are playing dialogues or cinematics, the player most of the time can't skip it, and you will spot every detail there. And it's better to have a better cinematic lighting and slightly less good environment lighting, in my opinion.
Okay, that's interesting perspective. Uh, so, um, so when you talk about technical things, what would you say is top three things any lighting artist that are listening, or any person doing lighting? Because we are not really covering just lighting artists; we're also covering people who are 3D artists who wants to present the portfolio better, right? Because lighting is important no matter what at this stage. So if you know some lighting, you already have an upper hand against other people who don't, right? So top three
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that you think is important from a technical point of view, and top three things from artistic point of view. I give you an hour.
Okay, for the lighting part, the first thing I see is knowing how much cost each light. Like a rectangle light, a spotlight, a point light, skylight, directional light. Like what costs more, and if, for example, you have to remove a shadow from a light, if you know how to counter that, like if you know how to place your light in a way that you can't see very much, you remove the shadow, you dial back the intensity, or you dial back the shadow quality, that will help you to produce better images, but not being frustrated once again. After that, knowing how to produce your own blueprints, or what's the name of it? Light functions. It's called light functions in Unreal Engine, or blueprints. It will help you a lot to create what you need to achieve, because not depending on another department is very satisfying. Yeah, there will always be sometimes when you have to go to the technical artist or to the VFX artist to help you. Like, for example, on Twin Mirror, I had to ask the VFX artist to help me on producing the fog sheet card, etc. But it's something right now I want to be able to do by myself, because it's something that you can achieve more stuff and have your own. If you have a vision of what you want to do in your mind, it's always more difficult to explain it to another person than do it yourself. So if you know how to do it yourself, you will be way more satisfied with what you produce. And on third, I don't see any third thing to know on the technical part. Maybe it will.
So you said
come later.
optimization or light function. That was the two main.
Yeah, optimization, light functions, and
So let's dig a little bit of optimization then, because as you know, when you work at the studio versus doing things at home, there's a difference when you look at the profiler to optimize versus actually having the build and looking at the Xbox Pix or whatever what was it called, right? But that affects your time as well, right? If you're not that many lighting artists, you spending time to create the build, I am assuming takes a time at your studio as well. Or do you actually sit down and wait for an hour or two to make the build and then you play it? How does it work for you?
It depends. Like if you're talking about building the lighting, like building the shadow maps, etc., building the baked lighting, yeah, there was sometimes that we had to just wait, especially toward the end of the production, where we needed to build in high then production to see the results and control everything. But we have a server at DOTNOD that is building the light every night. So if it was urgent, we would build it in preview or medium quality. And if you could wait the next day, and most of the time it could wait for the next day, we just let the server build the light for ourselves. And every time how can I say that? Every time I could see something that could be optimized a bit more, I would do it. But knowing your, like I said, knowing your budget would help you a lot, because there is the texture budget. Like building the light maps takes a lot of memory on your GPU, on your console. So another part of the optimization is knowing how to find a ratio between visual quality of your baked lighting and time and memory size. Because, for example, on Premiere, I had, let's say, a budget of 100, because I can't tell the exact numbers. If I wanted to respect the 100% budget, I had to dial and find all the light map sizes. And my way to work, and how I explain it to my students, it's like you put a cube of 1 meter by 1 meter on Unreal Engine. You set your light map size, let's say 64 pixel by 64 pixel on the light map shadow, on the light map size, and respect it on all of your scene, and this will help you keeping your budget under control.
So I just found out that the chat is disabled. So for people watching on YouTube anyway, feel free to stop by Discord and ask your questions there at least. That would probably solve a part of the problem right now. So just so you guys know that on YouTube at least, come to Discord and you can ask your questions there. So that was optimization, right? And build time. So because I know I remember at Ubisoft it took like 5 hours to build the game to play on Xbox dev kit, to test it, to then check the optimization, and that was like a lot of time. And
we had this kind of problem too. Like, it was not 5 hours, but more like 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, and you just had to sit there. Or most of the time, what I did was launching the build creation on another computer, a computer that wasn't used, and I went to do other things on the game, closing other tasks, etc. Because waiting 1 hour and a half to play the game is pretty long. Or sometimes I would just wait for the next day, because the server was building builds of the game every night, as well as building lighting. So most of the time I would just tell myself, okay, I will see that tomorrow, and like right now I have other things to do on the game. So waiting for the builds is terrible.
I mean, we have even though it's a very simple game we're working on now here in London in the UK, it's still very time consuming to build. We also use Unity. We're using Unity, so privately I use for freelancing for Unreal, but we're using Unity, and it has a very complex way of building, so it takes a lot of time. So I don't do my optimization directly in the build. I have to pass it on. I get report back, and then I have a look at it. But I mean, so far I don't have a problem, because as you say, I am aware of what I'm doing in terms of cost. I know the expenses, except this one scene that was a party scene, so with like 40 different lights. The frame rate dropped to 15, so that was a different thing. So I got the technical artist came back, dude. You're killing the Xbox build. You can't submit this. I was like, oops. So yeah, for sure. It's definitely a big deal knowing the technical things. So would you say it's so you said the technical things so far optimization, and you said the light functions, which is the ability to do like flickering lights or so on and so forth. That's good. So that kind of involves Blueprint then a little bit, right? Knowing your way around that. I don't know how to do the fog sheet, so good job on that if you know how to do that from scratch.
It's pretty time consuming. Thanks for all the VFX artists that help us to produce it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is repetition, right? Because a lot of these technical things requires you to remember a lot of the technical things, like the blueprint, the codes. So if you don't do it a lot every day, at least for me, I tend to forget it. So I can do it like once, then forget it, because it's like a year later I might be like someone ask me, and how did you do that? I'm like, I did this. How do you do it? Well, don't know. Go watch this YouTube tutorial. So it's definitely a challenge. So artistically then, as a lighting artist, what would you say is top 3 things as a lighting artist to do artistically?
First thing would be to know how light works in real life. You have to, because being a lighting artist for video games or for 3D animation is just mimicking what Mother Nature does. So if you know how light works in real life, you will know how to use light inside an engine. You will understand what is GI, what are light bounces, what is, for example, light intensity, why does light bounce more of a white world than a dark blue world, for example, why does my character appear blue if I put a blue sheet against him, because light bounces on it and it is blue. So you will have to understand how light works in real life to be better at lighting. And one very good way to do that is photography or cinematography. If you have a camera or just a pretty good smartphone, any high-end smartphone right now is able to produce really good images. If you have a smartphone that can, where you can change all of the settings like the ISO, the shutter speed, etc., use it to help you understand how camera work, and you will be able to produce better things inside the engine or inside the rendering application that you're using.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I have a pretty good camera, but the R9 lighting system that I have, the LED light, if I turn on my camera and I try and take photos, it looks like it's on drugs because it starts flickering and it goes crazy. It can't handle the light for some weird reason. So it's not that good in terms of this type of lighting. Actually, it handles the ring light very well. Some of my shots are really good, but the minute I started experimenting with that, no, I don't know. I was like, where's my DSLR camera? I need it to practice some more. But it's totally true. There's no excuse not to learn it. So that's definitely good advice.
And even if you like, at least in France, when we are in high school, we have physics lessons about how light works, like the reflectiveness of a material, the bouncing of the lights, where the bouncing of the photons of the light, etc.
If you paid attention,
you can use all the knowledge of it in lighting, because it's virtual. It doesn't mean that it's not linked to reality, because what is very amazing about Unreal Engine 5 right now, and why are we all lighting artists very hyped about Unreal Engine 5, is just we can finally, for real, do some real-time stuff that looks like and that works like in real life. Like, for example, bounce cards. We couldn't do bounce cards in real time before Unreal Engine 5. You had to bake the lighting. You had to use a spot and a white plane to bounce the light and create your bounce card. But right now, with Unreal Engine 5, you can actually create real-time bounce cards. And this is something huge. This is something amazing. And
so you can finish, and then I have a follow-up question to that before you.
This is why some of the cinema industry is using Unreal Engine right now. Like, for example, The Mandalorian, the latest real life TV show from Disney, is using Unreal Engine instead of using green screen, because the power of the engine allows even the cinema industry to produce tremendous images, because we have the power and the technology to do it.
Cool. So well, now 2 questions, but I'll ask 1 question. So you mentioned the bounce card, which I'm not going to assume everyone understands it, but you gave a quick example. But when would you use a bounce card that you just gave a quick example for people who don't know about it?
Like if you have an interior scene and you want more light coming from the windows, but you don't want to use lights that are casting shadows directly inside the room, to avoid the sharp shadows that are inevitable in lighting before ray tracing and lumen in Unreal Engine 5, we would have a lot of real-time shadows, and they are very sharp. And if you turn off the shadows, you can have light leaking inside your environment. So having like a spotlight or a rectangle light bouncing off a white plane or white cube outside of your scene that you hid at runtime could help you getting all these soft shadows, the diffused lighting coming from outside of your environment without having the video game look, like the sharp shadows, no bouncing light, etc.
Okay, cool. Um, so I guess we're slowly going into Unreal Engine 5, even more the topic now. So one question I ask everyone who brings up Unreal Engine 5 and generally has tried Unreal Engine 5 is, what is the impact for lighting artists? Do you think more people will be able to impress with simple lighting because it does a lot now out of the box? And how does that affect us who are already lighting artists? Does it make things easier or more difficult for us?
It depends, because right now Lumen is not magic. Like, for example, some of the new technology is screen spaced. For example, the real-time emissive lighting is screen space based. So you would have to be careful of what you do with emissive lighting, because if it's outside of your camera angle, you wouldn't be able to see the effect. And I don't think us lighting artists have to worry about the technology. It won't replace a lighting artist, because lighting is a job. It's a full-time job, and I think in some indie studios it will help a lot having the engine helping you to work. But in many of the bigger studios, replacing a lighting artist or get rid of a lighting artist, asking, for example, the environment team or the FX team to do the lighting, won't work, on my opinion, because they have so much to do. And the lighting industry is a lighting of specialties. And in my opinion, you're better off paying one person that knows how to do one specific things, because this person will go faster. It will understand what he's doing, what all of this person is doing. And I think it's good if more people can do lighting, because let's be honest, we are not many lighting artists in the industry. Like, at least I know when you want to recruit a new lighting artist, it's pretty difficult to recruit something that only does lighting. Like, there are a lot of people who does environment and lighting on the side, but there is not a lot of people who does only lighting.
Cool. We have a question, because for some reason YouTube shut down my chat today. So what exercise do you recommend to be able to improve as a lighting artist?
You just use a free scene on the Unreal Engine marketplace, find references, and replicate the lighting. And if you can't replicate it, try to understand why you can't. Like, find some references, find some mood boards, some tutorials on the internet. Ask lighting artists. Like, for example, when I started as a lighting artist on the industry, I was like six months old at DOTNOD. It was at the very beginning. I had two students that were in fourth and fifth year of their studies, and these people asked me, okay, I want to improve as a lighting artist. What is your advice? And I told them, do only lighting for the rest of your studies. Do only that. If you want to become a lighting artist, do only that. You have to tell your colleagues at the school, I will only do lighting, but it's for the good of the project, because it will look better, etc. And it was a success, because these two people are now at Ubisoft and at another studio in the UK. The one who did Man of Medan. What are their names? Let me just check it.
Go for it.
It's Supermassive. So yeah, and I think most of the people know them, because one of them is Mara Sereti.
Okay.
And yeah, they were just students, and they asked somebody who is a lighting artist how to do it. And don't hesitate. A message that I'd like to pass on to students we are humans. It's not because we are in the industry that you can't approach us. Just ask kindly, send a message. Like, I receive messages on our station of people asking questions. Okay, I want to do that. How would you do it? Can you take your time to judge my work, to review my work, etc.? And just don't hesitate. If we don't have the time, we will tell you, and we will tell, okay, come back in 1 month. I'm now under the water. I can't breathe right now. I don't have time. But if you have time, at least if I have time, I will do it, because helping other people to understand lighting is recruiting for the lighting clan that we have on the industry. And yeah, and
That's true.
Uh,
That's
yeah.
why we have a lighting bot. It's to make sure that people learn from these interviews from
and
you
even
as
if
well.
you don't want to become a lighting artist, and if you are a student, or if you are a beginner, if you know how to do lighting, even the basic things, you will produce better images, because lighting can make or break a scene. If you produce the best environment in the world and the lighting isn't good, isn't up to the level of your environment won't look as good as it could do. So just learn the basic things about lighting, and you will be able to produce better images for your portfolio.
Cool. What was my question? Because I'm trying to make up a question on the go instead of going through the list. There's one thing I was wondering about, because you also teach people, right? So you are also a mentor. Let's see if you have the same mindset as me or the same concern. If someone picks up Unreal Engine 5, because it is easier to do lighting now, right? Would you say they will have a harder time being as good as lighting artist as someone who has to do it a bit more old school? Like, I have done like really old school, so when I talk really old school, I think like Maya and back in the day, and you didn't have the baking necessarily. It didn't even have real
You
time.
had to pen the light into the texture directly into the output.
Yeah. And then the next stage was you placing everything very specific. Do you think Unreal Engine 5 is maybe forcing people without them knowing, unless we tell them, that they're skipping ahead some of the learning curve because it's just they don't have to do it? Would you say that will be an impact? What do you think happens then?
I, as a mentor, as a teacher, I always tell my students to learn to walk before running. So if it's always the same, if you don't know the basic stuff, you won't be able to exploit all the power of the engine. Because as I said, Unreal Engine 5 is not, it's like kind of magic, but it doesn't do everything. You have to know its limits. And if you know how to produce very good images with Unreal Engine 4 and the old technology, like let's say the baking technology, you will have better time to produce good images with Lumen and all the new technology, ray tracing, etc. Because it's like when I was at school, we learned to produce games with Unity. And a lot of my technical side comes from Unity, because on Unity, if you don't do the stuff yourself, you are screwed. You have to do everything by yourself. You have to code the shaders. There are no, at least when I was working on Unity, there were no basic shaders. Like if you launch Unreal Engine, you can use albedo, roughness, etc. on your material, and it will work. There is no, or at least there were no basic shaders.
It's a little bit better now with their own hyper shader. You can create shaders now, everything. But Unity, I argue still that to do Unity lighting, you need to be more technical superior than you would have to do Unreal. So I noticed that a lot when I got into Unity. It's true.
And for example, for my first my license degree, just before my master, my bachelor degree, that's how we say it in English, just before my master, I was asked by the jury, why would I produce a personal project on Unity and not use Unreal Engine? And my answer was, if I know how to do it on Unity, I will know how to do it on Unreal Engine. And the opposite is not true, because Unreal Engine does a lot of work for you. You can basically do a lot of stuff without knowing how to do shaders, etc. on Unreal Engine, and you can't with Unity. And it's the same with Unreal Engine 5, because in the end, UE5 is UE4 on testosterone. It's just UE5. It's just UE4 with drugs, with a lot of drugs inside it, because all of the UE4 technology is still there. It's the baking lighting, the static lighting is not deprecated. It's still there, and you can still use it, and you will have to use it for, let's say, if you are creating a game for the Nintendo Switch, you won't be able to do real-time lighting with Lumen, etc., because it's a weaker hardware. If you do mobile with mobile games, even if recent mobile games are looking very good, the technology has very progressed in 10 years, you won't be able to exploit Lumen, etc., on the mobile platform, at least until a lot of time. Like,
And VR too, right? Because of the FPS limits.
yeah. And for example, the Epic devs did like talk show, a podcast about Lumen and all of the new stuff, and they advertise it's in the documentation of Lumen. They advertise Lumen for next gen console only, so PS5, Xbox Series X, S, and PC, and their target is only 1080p, 60 FPS, or 4K 30 FPS, because it's very taxing on the hardware, and you have to remember that what is holding of the industry right now are the consoles. The consoles right now are not able to do as much as the PCs, even the next gen. So if you thought that you would be able to do crazy stuff for 4K 60 FPS on PS5, you're wrong. You're very wrong. You have to do sacrifices if you want to do so. It's possible. Like some exclusive PS game like Ratchet and Clank or Spider-Man run very smoothly, but it's because they knew where to turn up the settings and where to turn down the settings. And yeah, my message is learn how to use Unreal Engine the old way, the classic way, bake lighting, etc., and then learn how to use it with Lumen. Because yes, it can help you a lot produce better images, but if you don't know how to, it's like if you don't know how to put bricks and mortar together to build a wall, your wall will fall. You have to know how to build it first to build your house. So just learn the basic things, and you will be able to, and you will do yourself a favor in the end.
So, do you have any? Did you want to show breakdown of a picture or something, or no?
Let me check it, because the problem is I don't have my project files with me right now. Let me check if we could do that.
While you think about it, I'm just gonna, because my light is dying, so I'm just gonna switch lighting a bit.
Yeah.
Yes, and anyone who can see my background, I am definitely a Zelda fan.
I don't know which scene to break down without having the engine running.
Oh,
to
yeah,
be
it's
honest.
okay. You can check a picture, and you can just talk about your thought process, or like what you were thinking, how many lights you used, or
Yeah.
why
Okay,
you did it, or
let's take this scene because it's one of my favorites. Okay, I will just do that. Okay, so how am I supposed to share my
you
screen?
click share button, and I will put you up.
Okay, so let me prepare it first. Share screen. Yeah, share screen. This one. And authorize.
There
Yep,
you go.
so basically with this scene, so it's a collaboration with Yuri Hoek, who is a very talented lighting environment artist, sorry. And I've decided to use his scene with his authorization to exercise myself to do sci-fi lighting. And my goal here was to use some of the ray traced features like the reflection, etc., but keeping it under budget, because real-time lighting and real-time ray tracing is very taxing on the GPU. So for example, right here, my goal was to use a lot of the lights, of the artificial lights right there to lit all the scene. So I don't have a lot of lights inside the scene. I basically have all the neons that are working and some fill lights in the middle of it. So a lot of the fill lights are only diffused light, I'd say. There are no shadows. They are very small radius. The intensity is very low, but it helps with the contrast of the scene, and it helps to push some of the shadows up that would be too dark otherwise. And this scene is one of my preferred scene. It's one of the piece in my portfolio that I prefer, because I managed to achieve some many of the things I wanted. And like this kind of detail here shouldn't exist, because back when I produced this image, this scene, I didn't know that you could force the transparent shaders to render after the depth of field of the camera. So right now I would know how to do it, but it's like I did that 2 years ago, and I learned a lot of stuff since 2 years ago. So I'd say this kind of example shows that you will never cease to learn. And for any juniors or beginners out there, just don't feel bad if you don't know everything. If you miss some things, like people with experience or mentors are here to help you. And I think the studios that will recruit you knows that you don't know everything, but it's something that you have to accept in the end. And the other part of the scene is this one. So there is the image that you can see there, and vice versa. And yeah, it's simply basic things. Like, for example, right here, there is a lot of green there, the green there. It's actually the reflection from the infirmary logo that is right there. And it's one of the examples that I'd like to show when you have to know how light works in real life. Like, if it's green here, it has to have some green reflection here. It's just how light works in real life. And like, I like this shot a lot from Twin Mirror, because it was my first time working on black skin on a video game, and I had to
It's hard. It's different.
Yeah,
It's true.
I had to ask my colleagues who had darker skins to pose for me, like to study how light works on them. And I'm really happy about this shot, because the skin is looking very good, the lighting is looking very good, and it's some of the shots that I struggled with the most, because there is almost no lights on the scene right now. It's more of a, how I could say, it's like dawn, so the sun is below the horizon. There is not a lot of light, and this shot without the cinematic lighting looks very flat. We couldn't even see the character, etc. So in this kind of situation, it's there that you have to cheat, and you have to use your gut feels that you have to lead your cinematic shot to make it look better than it is without your cinematic lighting. And it's the same for every different scene. Like, for example, the light coming from here is a tiny desk lamp over there, right over there, but realistically it can't light this character up close, but in the end the shot works. So yeah, you would have to use your judgment and use your personal feelings to lead a scene. And one other advice that I can say: don't be afraid of black. Like, if you have black parts on your scene, a lot of contrast, it's okay. It's not because it's a video game that you have to see everything. Sometimes you have to, I agree, multiplayer games, etc. But if you are working on cinematics, etc., don't be afraid to have very dark shadows on your character, because in the end it's looking good, so you have to be happy about it.
So learn lighting, understand lighting, but be able to know when to break it or adjust
exactly.
it, basically,
because in the end we are working in a, how could we say that, entertainment industry.
Yeah, there's a story,
So-
there's a mood.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when you see, for example, the best example I have is all the elevator shots in the cinema, in the movies. I dare you, take your camera, the better camera in the world, walk into an elevator, your scene will look like trash because elevator lighting sucks. And why is it looking good in the movies? Because they're using a huge diffuse light to make it look good. So don't be afraid to break lighting and to use cinematic techniques to help your images look better. Like you go on YouTube and there are a lot of tutorials, there are a lot of videos that shows how some movie scene are lit or propped, and you will see that they are cheating a lot. There is a video about the movie The Social Network, and it's breaking down all of the first shot of the movie when they are in the bar, where Mark Zuckerberg is talking to his girlfriend, and the shot is very tiny. We can see only the two characters, but there's a huge light above them. There are diffuse light everywhere, a smoke machine, etc., and it's all artificial. So it's a little bit more difficult to do this kind of stuff when you're working on video games because the player can go everywhere. It's a 3D environment, so it can look at everywhere. But if you have the chance to work on cinematic lighting, don't hesitate to cheat. Like for me, it's an obligation to cheat on cinematic lighting because it's fixed. The player can't turn the camera away from the shot. So just use this advantage.
Cool. Very useful advices there from Florent. We have reached the end of our time, or at least the time I told I would use. That's his time. So before we end, there's a couple of things we probably want to remind people in terms of the lighting bot community. There's a portfolio review. You can go to Discord and you can get your portfolio reviewed. It's free. It's just to help you on with your stuff once a month. There's a free tutorial on how to do Unreal lighting for a Joker, for a Subway, which is also free asset, and that's also free. A few days later from now, we are interviewing William Labrie. He worked on Dungeon and Dragons Dark Alliance, and we talk about the lighting for that. I think the game came out a few weeks ago. And a last thing, which is a special bonus. Let me see here. Just
If I
to
may,
remind.
William's photo is looking amazing.
Yeah, I know it's super good.
Super good photo.
It's really good actually. And lastly, for people who don't know, Florent has some courses over at Experience Point, which is another community. He has two, I think. I have already watched them and paid for them because I always like to learn from people, regardless of how long they've been in the industry. I think there's always something to pick up. So I do recommend them. So please please support him and please have a watch. And who knows, maybe I can get him to make something for us in the future.
Thanks, man.
So yeah. There is, and again, thank you for Florent for showing up. I appreciate it a lot. And he might be on Discord later for a few minutes. I don't know. I normally ask ahead of time.
Feel free to ask me some questions if you're on Discord. I have some times tonight.
Yeah, so just message him. I will probably on voice a little bit later. I just have to have another meeting about lighting bots future and planning. But Florent, thank you so much. This was really cool.
Thank you for having me tonight.
I think maybe we need to do this again another time.
Why not?
I'm hoping to have more people, like 2-3 people, and really go even more, perspective and different points of view to really see what people actually just so people know that there's a different point of view, right?
Yep.
So thank you so much, and let's say goodbye to everyone. Thanks
Goodbye,
for watching, everyone.
Ciao.
Goodbye. Have a nice